Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, the Vengeance Factor. Yeah, the Vengeance Factor. I have to say it that way. I'm not sure why. We're going to talk about it. You know what? Someplace you can get into some vengeance on us. You can do it on other people, too. I guess this happens out there. Go to our Facebook page. It's All Been Tricked Before. We got a Facebook page. You don't like something we said before? Tell us about it there. But you don't have to be vengeful. You can be nice about it. Leave being vengeful to the Vengeance Factor. No, Vengeance Factor. The Vengeance Factor? Vengeance Factor on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And the underdressed Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're all underdressed compared to Steven. Actually, Keith, you're wearing a pretty sharp t-shirt, though. So
That's true.
If you're a Patreon donor, you can watch the video version of this podcast and see Keith's awesome t-shirt.
And my awful beard, because I just waited until like 20 minutes before to even try to shower.
Maybe it's the mirror dimension, the mirror version of Keith Jackson. So, we're here to talk the Vengeance Factor. First impressions.
It was adequate. That's my first impression. I don't have vengeance against the Vengeance Factor, but it was, which maybe one way or the other would be better, but it was adequate.
I'll second that.
I don't know. It might turn out that I liked it more than both of you. There are reasons why I want to pull it back to adequate as well, and I think a lot of it had to do with the way things started off.
Are you talking about that painted backdrop that we saw in the opening?
I didn't notice anything with the quality itself. It was more about the dialogue and the writing for the characters in that first however much of the episode. I noted it as it's like somebody was trying too hard to make the characters be in character. If that makes any sense. Some of the ways they were phrasing things, or it's like somebody doing like an RPG campaign. Picard got to make it so in there. It was just sort of like we're leaving a tavern, we're going on an adventure. Here's the way we're going to react to these things that are coming up,
It's funny you say that, because this is a brand new writer, Sam Rolfe, who only wrote this episode Next Gen, and he wrote one episode DS9. He's best known for being a writer-producer for The Man from U.N.C.L.E., both the 60 series and the film, the 2015 film.
Oh, wow.
So he was the creator of The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
What was it co-written? Because that was one of my other notes later. Because It seemed like suddenly there was like the last half of that. Suddenly everything just sort of flushed out of nowhere. And it was like, oh, okay.
Nope.
And it's like this scene was planted over there as a warm up, and then suddenly, okay, now we're getting into a more nuanced Riker in particular. It
was directed, while we're on it, by Timothy Bond, who, I don't know. He's got lots of directing credits. Friday the 13th, a series. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. That kind of thing. So
I mean, I'm not saying, oh my God, this was awful, and this is, it's just I noticed something at the outset, and that in itself is something, I guess, if something stands out.
Yeah, I think one of my other general impressions was when it comes to, and we've had plenty of, going all the way back to TOS, plenty of either civil wars on a planet or between two neighboring planets. This was not one of the more inspiring.
No.
Or inspired, or even the tension itself. Like, the stakes didn't seem that huge, and obviously there's the underlying story was the better story, and I wasn't real happy with the way that resolved either, but we'll get into all that. But yeah,
me neither. Starting at the beginning of the episode, that was a very, very one of their most obvious painted backdrops instead of a background, and it looked like they just redressed the duck blind set from the Proto-Vulcan episode, and then hung the painted backdrop behind it out the window.
Yeah,
and then made everything lit green, which is supposed to somehow, I don't know, I didn't like that. I didn't like the lighting, I didn't like the set, I didn't like any of it. So there's raids going on, and they're going to talk to a planetary leader. That leader is Sovereign Morok, played by Nancy Parsons, who's best known for Porky's, Steel Magnolias, Sudden Impact, Days of Our Lives.
I knew her, recognized her the whole time. And then when I went to IMDb, I was like, okay, Porky's 2, Porky's Revenge.
This was the only Star Trek episode she did, and I don't see a Seinfeld credit for her.
There was not. No, in my brain, that's what I kept thinking. Was like, I know she was on a Seinfeld, but nope, no dice.
So she's picked up by the Enterprise, and her introduction's real weird, where they put her on the ship. We get to meet some of her staff. She's looking out a window. They're like, would you like something to drink? And she's like, sure, some water. And then of course, there's a moment here, which we'll talk about in a second. And then they're like, okay, here's your water. And she's like, oh, like she'd already gotten so lost in thought staring out the window in the 10 seconds it took them to get her water that she'd forgotten she asked for water. It just, I don't know. It felt really weird to me.
She has a lot on her mind as a sovereign.
I get it, but I don't get how she forgot she asked for water 5 seconds ago.
This, I mean, I was going to say something earlier too, or I don't know if maybe save it for another or a little later in the episode, but it did seem, some of the directions seemed odd. And this brings up the question again of who made these decisions, or how did that come about? How did these scenes end up flowing? Are the actors making strange decisions? The director insisting you need to make this obvious in this way, or we need to, were they inserting pretext or subtext into the writing that wasn't supposed to be there? I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
That makes me think of, we talked about this a lot with season 3 of TOS, how hard, the Shatner's been typecast as overacting. But I think a lot of that is because he was working so hard on some of those terrible shows to sell them, bless his heart. And I think that may have been what was going on here too, because I just feel like there really weren't enough stakes to. Well, and maybe I just didn't care. maybe it's a different thing altogether. I just didn't care enough, regardless of how high the stakes were with these guys.
I thought you'd care a little more because in the scene we're talking about, we meet Utah, the chef.
Now you're talking.
Who is a pretty blonde actress, Lisa Wilcox.
Yeah.
Best known for Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4 and this role.
Yeah. I wrote, Riker had the same thought I did. Riker moved on Utah like Brigham Young and the Mormons did, is what I wrote.
Oh God. I thought you were about to quote you know who, and I didn't want to.
But yet
didn't want it to go there.
Oh no.
She was totally immune to Riker's charms, like completely 100% not interested, at least the way they started out portraying her.
Right. Yeah. That whole thing is weird too.
Because why would you be immune to Riker's charm? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for one. Anyway, so we end up finding out Utah is killing people off in revenge.
And is somehow super old, but hasn't aged. Which they never actually explain in any sufficient way.
Yeah.
Well, she said something about being altered.
She did, but if they had that technology, why is nobody else altered? How does nobody know about this technology? Like, it doesn't make any sense how a clan that was so weak enough that they got wiped out by a neighboring clan has some secret technology that nobody else has that lets somebody not age.
And wouldn't it be better if that happened 20 years ago and you don't even have to get into that mumbo jumbo? I mean, to me, I just didn't. I didn't get that, and I thought that was unnecessary as well.
I can give you an explanation, although it probably whether or not it's sufficient or not. I mean, I guess the idea is to explain why she would be so far beyond suspicion, because no one would expect anyone to hold those kinds of grudges anymore.
Whereas if it was her grandmother that committed murder, then we would know. Yeah, and
to me, it's very. Even her relationship with Riker is very Lenore Caridian from one of my favorite episodes, Conscious of the King, original TOS. Even the way she was doing it, the way nobody noticed, and then people finally started to put together, and, what was her relationship with Riker. And then it also reminded me of That Which Survives, although that's a different one too, whereas it's also a beautiful woman, Lee Merriweather, that everyone's like, hey, you're beautiful. And then she's like, I'm going to kill you because I have to protect my people. Not exactly the same, but similar just in the sense that people keep dying.
She's acting so cagey. Like, I know this is skipping ahead, but the scene where she's talking to Riker and she's like, no, I'm not a slave. I'm a servant, but I can't leave. I can't possibly leave. And you're just like, but why not if you're not a slave? Like, the whole time she's almost flashing a neon sign above her head. Suspect me.
She says, I've never been good in conversation, to which I also wrote, we know, and Riker doesn't care.
No, because he's only got one thing on his mind, and it's not her conversational skills.
Well,
it's her cuisine.
Speaking of
Two things, Keith. I think Riker sees food as erotic. He likes to cook himself, and
Well, while we're on that subject, the other thing I wrote down that she said was, "Don't you want me to give you pleasure?" Title of my sex tape. So, and Riker turned her down. Right? Well, wait.
Well, no, Riker at that point was like, "But I want to give you pleasure too," and she's like, "I don't know how to do that." So
that's right. Yeah.
Which it's like, no, let Riker teach you. If anybody can teach you, Riker can teach you.
Don't you understand? I know what I'm doing.
I mean, if she's truly not interested in Riker, then of course that he shouldn't force herself or anything. But I think it's clear later in the episode she is interested in him. She's just more focused on her mission.
Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
Their one kiss, I felt some heat there. I was like, all right, we might have something here. But
so to continue with my devil's advocacy for a moment, the other thing about the aging technology. We don't know exactly how primitive these people were back when these clan wars were happening. And also the fact that they had some sort of genetically engineered disease was evidence of being pretty advanced.
And yet they don't have warp travel or anything. Like they have to be warp capable or Starfleet wouldn't get involved. Right. But they sure seem like they don't have warp capability because they have to make the Enterprise ferry him around. Although Picard, I guess Picard's making them let him ferry him around. I'm talking myself out of my own points. This isn't saying them. But it still felt like they were more primitive than they should be to create such advanced genetic stuff.
Perhaps.
Riker says 53 years ago, she hasn't aged a day. It doesn't sound like a compliment when he says it.
No, it does not. It's almost like he's probably thinking, oh my God, I almost slept with a 70-year-old. I'm not that old yet. Which is ridiculous because it doesn't matter how old she is.
Right.
Especially
it did seem to be like a little hint of betrayal, I guess, on his part.
That he thinks she lied to him, but she didn't lie because he never asked how old she was. Because that would be rude.
But yeah, I was going to also say, there are a lot of things that we can do theoretically that don't have anything to do with space travel. And also having a war for that long would, in a sense, devolve them to a certain point. I mean, I think that the civilization suffered because of the clan war. I think was also
absolutely.
The point.
I guess which
makes them seem more primitive.
Right, but I guess I'm just saying if that technology exists, how is it kept completely a secret? I don't know. Was her clan like the really brainy, most intelligent people, and that's why they were wiped out so badly?
That actually would explain it, I think.
In a very cliche way.
Yep.
Speaking of which, I think I guess the main conflict that we're talking about right now, well, one of the two, I guess. Is the Acamarians, is that what they are? Acameria?
I think so.
Whatever.
Sure.
Do they really need the Gatherers? I mean, the Gatherers give them a bad rap. Why don't they just say, hey, we have nothing to do with these weirdos. We disavow them.
They tried to do that. And Picard said, no, you have to avow them. You're responsible. They're your people.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair.
Well, what you just said is plays on a note I wrote where the Sovereign is trying to negotiate, and she says, we need you as much as you need us, or something along those lines. And then she never, ever elaborates on that point. And I'm right there with you, Stephen. Why do they need them?
No,
they don't.
And is it a good idea we've seen good examples, but should the captain of the Enterprise, and I'm talking Kirk, Picard, whoever, be the go-between in these kind of negotiations? I mean, should they be the Jimmy Carter of the Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin to put myself in, to clearly date myself to an agreement from 43 years ago, but 44 years ago.
I mean, we've seen Picard acting as diplomat before, and sometimes it takes an outside party to make peace. And in this case, Picard's been tasked with stopping these raiders or whatever, patrolling this sector.
I guess
it makes total sense to me that he stepped into that role.
I guess that makes sense from I want to solve this problem, so I don't have to do this anymore. That makes sense too.
They beam down to find the raiders. Geordi is inexplicably on this away mission. There's no reason to have a fourth member of the senior staff.
I was going to point that out, but I think that's sort of becoming a more established pattern to the point I made like a week or two ago. If they're not going to duplicate his visor in some way, it seems like he would be useful for no other reason than to find things that he usually finds out of convenience when he's written in. So,
yeah, but this didn't seem like the type of away mission they needed somebody with his skill set.
Yeah, they were able to identify campfires from the ship, so I'm pretty sure they didn't need Geordi to figure out what they were finding. I'm like, what? Campfires?
That goes back to the RPG theory of there's sort of like writing. The writer kind of like picked some main characters and was like, here, this is how they would react in this situation.
Right.
Kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and mention my alternate episode is that Kirk, Spock, and McCoy go camping on the Raiders world.
Very good.
And then get into a fist fight. So Shatner could prove how young and virile he is.
I actually have an alternate episode this time.
Oh.
Based on the opening scene, and I called it the Naked Vengeance. because it seemed like they were stumbling onto the crew people laid out sort of like the Naked Now.
Mhm.
They found the virus again, or something like it. And this time it's personal.
I thought to get to the landing party, it's got classic Riker pointing when they get down there. He's like, he just points, and everyone's like, "Okay, I get that."
And not at all trying to be quiet, just loudly talking about everything they see.
Yep.
Which, if you're going to the enemy camp, you'd think you'd want. I know they want to greet them; they're not trying to be sneaky. But then, if you're not trying to be sneaky, you want to greet them. Why don't you yell, "Hello, anybody home?" What their approach made no sense.
My next note is actually when they are sneaky, when they beam out and beam right back in. That was cool.
I don't think they beamed out, did they?
Did they just?
I think they just, without tapping the comm badge, said forward to beam out, so they would think they were beaming out, and moved around in the smoke.
Okay,
which I thought was pretty clever. I actually really liked one of the few elements of this episode I really liked.
I did too. Actually, I liked the sneakiness. Yeah.
Yeah, when they escape the Mad Max guys.
Yes.
Well, I written down why do they need the steam to beam out, and then because they could have just beamed out in the trash cans, and then when they actually didn't beam out, I was like, oh, that's why they did the steam.
That makes more sense. Speaking of which, this is a general question: would you rather shoot an original series phaser like a gun, the gun phaser, for lack of a better term, or the phasers these guys use?
Next gen, all the way.
Yeah, you prefer the Like I know we have the button ones that TOS use, but they also have the ones they put in more of a gun thing.
Right.
And maybe
eventually we'll see. I don't know if we'll see on Next Gen, probably, but DS9 Voyager, we had the phaser rifles, which the original series had, but rarely seen. And see them more, and they look like guns.
Well,
right, I love that. I think this is my TOS bias, because I love the rifle and Where No Man Has Gone Before, and I prefer the handgun-looking phaser. In my mind, I feel like I'd have more control, but I don't know that I've ever played a video game where I'd be doing more of this, but I think you younger folks probably have.
Well, what's the rationale, Jimmy, for example?
I don't like guns.
Okay, that was in my head. I was thinking that a lot of it. Some of it ends up being how we're brought up, or how we the type of fiction we're into. Usually, that there's something that feels glorified about it, like all the things I've seen before about like holding a gun in that way. Like
I don't like that. I don't like that.
I don't love guns, but I will. Some of my later notes will belie that, as well as what I just said about the original series. Phaser.
I mean, it's not like Kirk hardly ever used that gun. He was always double fisting them instead, which sounded really bad. But you know what I mean. He was physically combating.
Yes, right.
Speaking of the Mad Max guys, this is a segue for Steven's benefit. I wrote down the fashion segment will last half an hour. There's just so much going on with all these people, especially.
Yeah, Mad Max sums it up pretty well. I didn't take a lot of notes on their fashion, other than I didn't like it. And I guess this sums up what I think of their fashion. How bad do those guys smell?
Oh, terrible.
How bad do they smell?
Definitely terrible.
Kind of leathery getup. They never change.
Worf pointed it out.
Oh, that's true. And who's whatever their leader's name is? I have a hairy chest. He's got a super hairy chest. It looks like a rug.
Yeah.
There
oh my God.
are 4 named ones on IMDb, and I'm trying to figure out which one's which. I definitely know which one Stephen Lee is, but I think I want to say that first leader is Joey Oresko played him role. Yeah. And he's best known for The Big Year with Steve Martin, Owen Wilson, Jack Black, Stargate SG-1, and then this role. He not super well-known actor.
Yeah, he did a lot of guest stuff back in the day. I think.
And we also had Volnath. Was that the one that died?
Yes, I think.
I think so, too. He was played by Mark Lawrence, who's best known for The Man with the Golden Gun, Diamonds Are Forever, From Dusk Till Dawn. He actually has a ton of credits, and he will play a heavy in the episode of Deep Space Nine, Bada Bing, Bada Bang. So great casting. His only other Star Trek appearance.
I think I recall that Brawl was the leader they went to eventually.
The first
travel
leader.
To.
Yeah.
No, the second one.
Oh, the second one was Shorgon, played by Stephen Lee, who's best known for War Games, Negotiator, Burlesque, La Bamba.
And he was on Seinfeld. He's the guy who, remember when Jerry got his cabinets changed and he kept asking him, do you want a short nail or a long nail? I don't care. He was just constantly giving Jerry choices. Well, whatever you want me to do. So then everyone shows up and Jerry's got the cabinets and it's underneath. And then he ends up building George the little area to nap under his desk.
Oh, I remember the nap area.
Yeah, so that's in that episode, which is also
Okay.
when Elaine's new boyfriend buys her a mattress and Kramer's swimming in the East River. So that's all in that episode. So yeah, I recognize him right away. One more, and I don't know if this is a fashion note or not, but the stuff on their faces and stuff.
Yeah.
Is it tattoos or branding or?
Look like
I think
a
both.
mixture of both.
Yeah.
Like
Sorry.
both, but I think it denotes clan, I assume.
Yeah.
More rank or something, maybe. I don't know.
At first I thought it was more of this is a skin disease.
Skin
thing.
disease.
And I was like, no, it doesn't make sense because they're in little patterns.
Yeah. Besides just the Mad Max, I agree with Steven. They were relatively uninspired and cliche for what they were trying to present. But the Sovereign and what her people wore were also about as bland and boring and cliche as you can get for their step. Like the costumes were so unimpressive in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first person I saw was Maroc, and something about the hair, the stripe up the middle, the bearing. My first reaction was, who is this fop? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it looked to me more like a George Washington type character, or one of those.
She reminded me of Vedic Wynn from Deep Space Nine, who's a major reoccurring character. I think for most of I know she's there at the end. I want to say she joins in season 1 or 2, but she's played by the amazing Louise Fletcher, who is a much better version of this character, I think.
Yes, yeah. I did like the, for lack of a better term, the crack in the middle of their forehead that they had. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty, but it was something different.
They were butt heads.
The Gatherers for sure. And I think...
And Yuta.
Yeah, the fashion for those guys was... for Yuta and the Sovereign was... Bill Teese was rolling over in his grave, and he wasn't even dead yet.
I got some genuine laughs from the Nomads during that first meeting on the planet's surface.
When they were top.
But the mockery of the whole, drink this for me, pouring it down, the whole rough housing kind of, this is ridiculous kind of thing that they were doing. And
it reminded me of I told Colleen the other day, I think the Seinfeld segment of this podcast is becoming the Family Guy segment of this podcast. Remember when Peter became a pirate? And he was kind of like, these are my men, ha ha ha! And then the pirates would all go, ha ha ha! That's what that reminded me of, because they were like, ha 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 ha! What are you laughing about? What are you laughing about?
And then I wrote down, where are the women and children? They eventually mentioned that some of them have children.
Right.
But it just felt like, again, I keep using the word, but it felt so cliche, so a stereotype of what these people could be. It was almost as blatantly awful stereotypical type as Code of Honor from season 1. Like,
it felt like they were a biker gang that just didn't have bikes.
Yeah. They clearly had spaceships that we never saw, but
yeah. It was, yeah.
That makes me think of 2 points. The first one, though, this I think is a better transition into the really awkward scene in the bar with Wesley. And that goes again back to, was it the writing or the direction seemed, the choices were too big for what was happening. It was just really off-putting. And
his line about, I have many friends that don't like me, as he's trying to engage Wesley in a fight. It's just, come on.
I don't know what that scene was. I did like they had the line that I know you hated, Keith, probably. You don't like me, do you?
And then he said,
yeah.
I have many friends that don't like me.
Yeah.
I hate that. But also, I could tell where they were trying to go once they were getting there. But it just seemed like a weird, just the dynamic was so forced and big and much more off-putting than I think it needed to be. I think they were trying to humanize him, or rather try to explain his fascination with Wesley to the extent that he has a son his age. He's surprised at how different Wesley's life looks than what he is used to seeing, and he's trying to kind of bond with him. You're doing homework. What are you doing, egghead? That whole kind of thing, and like trying to rib him. But it was so.
My son's not good at math.
They also look like hoods from a '60s film. What are you doing, egghead? And the biker gang comes in. But I will quote the Sovereign, who said, "Barbarians, this is futile." Which I thought, is she a Borg? Is she a Borg? For a second, but she was.
That's where they got it from. She hasn't aged a day. She's a spy from the.
When they bring the Sovereign and the hoodlums together, they ask, "Is this a trap?" She's like, No, oh, it isn't. Okay, fine. Like there was nothing else to go on there.
That's the whole episode in a nutshell,
Right?
or most of the episode in a nutshell. It's
Yeah. I will say, again, I really hate everything they did with Utah for the most part, and Utah and how that shook out and all the ex machina of being able to not age. But her murder of the old man was pretty perfect because he was old. And if the Enterprise crew hadn't been such a curious, inquisitive bunch, it could very easily have been mistaken as a heart attack, and she could have gotten away with it. I mean, I really actually liked the Crusher Riker data scene where they're being sleuths on the computer, and they're figuring it all out. Like that part was actually good. I think that's my problem with it. Is I don't hate our main cast in it. I hate the guest stars in it.
Yeah, the Utah thing, I wanted to be stronger one way or the other, whether it's the mystery aspect, in which case it's kind of like, crap. I can't think of the thing.
It's kind of like crap.
It is. Actually, that's with Sandra Locke, and she's also the one. That reminds me of that one where she's killing off all these people who did her wrong. It was the 70s, so they had raped her. So that was a lot of the movies.
Luckily, that doesn't happen anymore.
It was very unpleasant. I guess here's my thing, and I know we're in an age where there's a lot of people practicing vengeance, but on some levels, like Lenore Caridian, we're not rooting for her because she's protecting a Kodos the Executioner. She's protecting a terrible person. But Utah, shouldn't we almost be rooting for her? I mean, I know we don't root for vigilantes, except unless it's Batman. One of my favorite Western is Once Upon a Time in the West. In my alternate episode, she's more like Chuck Bronson in that. And we're following her story, and we're seeing, where her journey and why she so wants to kill these people. As it is, I can see why it just feels empty. And I guess my thing is, why couldn't he just stun her? Was that because of her genetics?
Oh, yeah, I wrote that down too. It didn't make any sense that, maybe the alteration?
I guess that was part of her genetic things, is that she's immune to stun and he has to vaporize her or she won't fall.
I wish that had been made clear. That didn't occur to me until just now because, I was like, doesn't that usually knock them out? Why can't he just knock her out? But I guess maybe he was trying to and it wasn't working. Yeah,
he started with a low setting and he kept upping it. He upped it several times.
That's another reason I hate this happened 50 years ago, because Shogun and Brule, as much as we don't like these guys, I mean, their people did it, but do they specifically bear the burden? Again, like Kodos, obviously he does. And then Once Upon a Time in the West, these guys all killed his brother or in some way. He's hunting down everybody who was associated with it. So if she was doing that, I think it makes it stronger than I'm just killing anyone who's still from that race or from that clan.
Well, yeah. That's you answered your own point back there. I think it would have made it too blatant for us to want to be on her side, or blatant is the right word. Yeah. There would have been less of a quandary about whether to support her in this because, sure, I mean, she would kind of be the anti-hero in this situation if she were simply dealing out one-for-one vengeance as opposed to holding a 50-year grudge against every single person who's related to these other people.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, which doesn't sound interesting. Well, actually, it wasn't interesting to me. And, I guess I get into that same thing and I got into this with Elementary, my dear, where even in the holodeck, Data is like, oh, hey, this man was beating her for years and years and years. But you know what? Law's the law. She's got to go to jail. It's like, no, that's a play on. That's a no harm, no foul. Play on soccer.
Was that within the framework of the holodeck, the story, or was there?
Yeah. Well, although I still feel like, then why mention that she was beaten and she may have been justified, and then go, well, I don't care. But I also feel that way here. Like, and again, if he couldn't stun her and the only way was to vaporize her, I guess that's what you have to do. But it seems like Riker, especially it really cheapens the end. Not cheapens. The end just is like the rest of the episode to me, because Riker should have, if he's really conflicted about it, it doesn't seem like he's that conflicted about vaporizing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not tackle her? Is she going to actually kill everybody?
That's a good point.
They know what's going on. Why not tackle her and throw her in the brig and take her to some place where she can be taken care of? Instead, he vaporizes her. Then he's like, oh, I'm agonizing over it. And I'm like, no, you're not. no, you're not. And it just felt like a lot of those third season TOSs, I shouldn't say a lot, but there were enough where it's like, what is Kirk upset about? He just met her an hour ago.
And so much about that scene. Like, Riker tells the guy not to move. The guy should be moving away from her, not just sit there and waiting.
Right. Riker's just exacerbating the situation.
And she acts totally dumb, too, because they bring up the other murder from 50 years ago, and she's immediately like, that was 50 years ago. And
yeah, I love it.
If she's had all this time to plan, she should be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. What murder? Who was that person? I don't know. You know?
You know what? I just changed my annoying person in the episode to Riker, just based on this conversation.
Oh no, I'm making it you, Una. We'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
I would say that perhaps he vaporized her because he saw her as a continuing biological threat.
I think he vaporized her because he kept upping the phaser setting.
There's that too, but
that's what it took to subdue her. I'm
saying as opposed to tackling her and trying to hold her for longer. I guess they didn't know the extent of what she could do with that biological
weapon. They did. That biological weapon was specifically attuned to only affect those people from that one
Yes,
crime.
my point is how could they know that they could stop her in perpetuity from doing whatever?
Lock her in a cell forever?
Yeah.
What I'm saying, it's like in that moment. In that moment, there were many things that could have happened if they were restraining her within that room until they could get her away.
Oh yeah, no, it was absolutely
for the elementary Dear Data thing. If I'm still trying to remember this, if it was a character within the holodeck, I guess the idea is it was still like a period piece to an extent. The rules for domestic violence back then probably would have been a lot different, as opposed to whether or not she could have been prosecuted or whatever they're going to do.
I guess I don't understand the holodeck and I don't like it. So
no, but was it a character was it like a mystery within there that you're talking about? Or?
I guess so, but I feel like Data as Holmes should have some autonomy. But I guess to your point, in Data's mind, he's like, well, I have to stay in this channel and do things this way. But but then all of a sudden, Moriarty and surprise, surprise, the holodeck's gone rogue.
Well, I will say that from actual Sherlock Holmes stories, as I recall, I feel like Sherlock has had the attitude of sort of like, well, right. I think that he would have had that. He's taken that kind of agency in the past where he's said, this person has been wronged enough already. I think that she was justified in doing this. My business here is done.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what Data should have done.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're right there, I think.
Yuta, to her defense, she does say it's murder. It isn't murder. It's justice, which I wrote. Justice is a completely different episode.
Yes.
My comment on that was parentheses vengeance. She was so close to saying the title, and it was like, it isn't murder. It's vengeance. It was like, yes,
the vengeance
finally.
Factor.
But nope. Yeah, that even better. She had gone all the way. It's the vengeance factor.
Oh.
But
I have a few random notes here.
That's all I got left too. Yep.
I wrote Crusher's very competent, which I was appreciating that.
Yeah.
My one Crusher note was at one point she does like a little come here with her finger to Riker or somebody. That's the sexiest moment in TNG so far for me. And I know I just mentioned Justice and we talked about the Naked Now. That little finger thing was like, that's the sexiest thing for me so far in TNG.
It was to Riker. While they were investigating, she's like, "Come here, let me show you what's really interesting about this."
Like, I forgot everything else that was going on in the episode for a couple seconds there. I was like, "Is she talking to me? Is that for me?" Yeah, it was just like.
And then Riker remembered he can't touch her because she's spoken for by Picard. Troy is a great wing woman for Riker.
Yeah,
I forgot to write that down.
Too. I was like, I thought she was going to say, "Why don't you join us? Let's the three of us sit here." And then she gets up, which I feel like it was just for story convenience. But
no, she saw what was happening.
Yeah,
she knew.
I think she was being supportive of Riker.
Yeah.
What do you think what was the food they were eating? Because
it was some type of roasted vegetable.
Okay.
She said.
Riker was selling me on it. I was like, all right, I'm hungry.
Did you notice his fork?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm doing a fork watch now. Apparently, it was very different than the forks the Beta Zeds used, but it was definitely some weird futuristic fork. It was almost like a spork because it almost had like some spoon qualities, but it was cool. I liked it. I want to use.
Maybe it was like the specific fork that Utah's people use for the cuisine or something.
Maybe I wrote down at one point, Riker's going to try to save her. That's what this is. It's Riker saved the woman.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Picard decides to go over to the negotiations, and Riker and Troy are there, and Riker's like, it's dangerous. And Troy doesn't say anything, and Picard's just like, I got this, I'm going. And I'm thinking in my head, Troy knows if it's dangerous or not. She's reading their thoughts. If it's dangerous, she's going to say something. Riker should know that. This should be acknowledged in this scene.
Yep.
Like, just a quick glance at Troy, like, is it dangerous? No? Okay, great. Fine. I'll go over there.
That could again be the writer's lack of familiarity with the characters or something, perhaps.
And that was also the thing that struck me out in negotiation. Have you ever once, in any negotiation scene in fiction or even any negotiation you've heard about in real life, seen such a example of Picard's a really good negotiator and both sides are going to be completely reasonable about it? And I'm going to get angry and immediately back down because Picard says, no, this is reasonable. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Like, it was
you're right.
Such a bad negotiation scene.
Yeah. There definitely wasn't gripping at all.
When Picard at the end is in 10 forward and a woman crew officer walks up and hands him a pad, at first I thought they were handing him a menu for 10 forward. And then he looks at it and he's like, oh, we have new Starfleet orders. And I'm like, wait, so why was the girl waiting in 10 forward to give him the orders? Because he came into 10 forward and she walks up to him from inside 10 forward.
She was probably on her way. She's like, you know what, I'm going to stop off, get one drink.
Sure.
And then,
there he is. I don't have to go to the bridge.
Hey, do you guys think there's a copy of the 10 forward menu online?
I mean, no, but
okay.
Probably not an accurate one.
I want to see it. It could have been
a situation where she uses the comm badge. Hey, Captain, I've got some new orders for you. And Picard's like, oh, where are you at? She's like, I'll be right up. Picard's like, where are you right now? 10 forward. Oh, no, just stay there. I'll be right now.
Yeah.
I could use a drink anyway. And then my last note I wrote down was, this is a lame Riker episode.
Yeah.
It's a Riker episode, and my least favorite Riker episode to date.
My two random notes are, I think I was joking on this one. Sovereign says to Creme Brulee, you should know you were there, which I wrote, sick old lady burn. She totally got him with that one.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That was a great example of one of the things, that scene, following the rough housing. There were a couple, that was one of the things that got me, like a real laugh. So
essentially, she was playing ball bricker, and those were the guys from Porky's. That's essentially what was going on. That would have been a better episode. Creme Brulee is acting up, and Picard just looks at him, doesn't say a word, and he backs down. I'm like, well played, well done. I enjoyed that. That was my last note.
Yeah, those Raiders sure wanted to negotiate peace for some reason.
I had several more than I would have expected. Notes, that is.
Okay.
Well, first of all, before I can get to the notes, it is weird. It does seem like I liked this episode more than both of you. Trying to figure out why exactly, but I think some of the things felt a little fun and refreshing to me, just the way some of the things were approached. Although I haven't really disagreed with anything you have said as far as your reasons for not liking it. I can see that, and it's just like I'm kind of like the reaction to when the old man who died. It's funny because I thought there was a knife sticking out of his head when I first saw this scene. But either way, I liked that it wasn't like the bikers didn't do the thing that I would have expected them to do, which is to immediately cry foul and blame anybody for it. It was just sort of like, oh, this happens. Like,
they were the most reasonable outlaws I've ever seen.
The old guy who died, that's also the title of my tombstone.
Oh, God.
I already bought it.
In retrospect, as you're saying, Jimmy, some of the things were too neat. I guess at the time I wasn't in the mood to see them go for the conflict I would normally have expected in those circumstances. But you're right, it didn't seem that realistic if you look at it that way. I actually liked Yuta, perhaps just the way the actress was portraying her. Just a lot of the stuff that was going on there as far as the nuance she brought to it. But when you put aside the holes you guys have brought up, as far as her part in this, as far as the writing goes, yes, I can see why that would be bad. But I guess I liked her.
I can't decide if I like the actress or not. I don't feel like any of my criticisms were her fault. But
right,
yeah,
I just didn't like the character so deeply. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same place. Like, I mean, she's beautiful. I think she was in a tough spot. She was hamstrung. Like, you can't reveal too much, and you kind of got something going on, but you can't say too much. But it wasn't even like, oh, shit, it's mysterious. What's going on? It was more like, what's her secret?
I didn't care.
A good one, but
I didn't care at all what her secret was.
So during that scene, though, when she was sent to him, I wrote down that Riker almost seemed like he was like, well, no need to look a gift horse in the mouth. And so my next thought was, do you think Kirk would have just hesitated that long, or would he have just gone for it anyway?
Oh, he would have gone for it.
Yeah.
Kirk would have slept with her.
Yeah.
Then during the pillow talk afterward, it would have been like, hey, did you want to do that? I don't know.
Yep. How come
touching my face?
When Kirk was probably used to being the one that was pleasured, so
yeah.
So the other thing about the poor ship capabilities or whatever of the bikers, I actually liked that scene during the confrontation with the second leader. Who was it?
Yep, the second leader. Gotcha. I don't care about their names, Keith. Okay. It's not that important.
Fine. All right.
By the way, the Gatherers, worst gang name ever.
Yeah.
But if I ever have a gang, that's what I'm calling them as an homage to this episode.
Why would you homage this episode?
It'll be such a deep cut.
That's the point of it.
There's got to be some other gang names in Star Trek that are much better.
And guess what? I'm going to be showing all my chest hair. It's going to be showing, gray or not. It'll be all be showing.
It's a good chest hair costume, and it's also a good way to confound the audience and really just root out the real aficionados.
Hey, Halloween's just a couple weeks away, so just throwing it out.
Oh my God, it's a gatherer. Yeah.
It's a Mad Max. They'd say it's a Mad Max.
Yeah, it is.
But that's the point. If they can tell the difference, they're you know.
I don't think I'd tell the difference if I walked up to him on the street. Maybe this week. After this week, no.
It's someone from a Mad Max movie or from some terrible 80s movie.
Right. Some other 80s dystopian sci-fi adventure.
Yeah.
Right. So my point in bringing up that encounter was that we don't really get to see that happen a lot where they're just like not in danger, where the Enterprise doesn't have to like tiptoe. It's just sort of like, come on, guys. All right. And just I love the little bit of gratification, that pause where they're hailing us now. I don't think I've ever seen the top-down view of the phaser like that, where you can actually see him adjusting anything. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know. Is that something they've even explained before?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just where did that come from? Is that canon that they have a little dial that they do that with? And just
the original series had a dial you could spin.
Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Wesley?
I'm somewhere between 2 and 3. I think just 2. I just didn't like the line, Data. What? Come on.
Well, that's another example of what I meant toward the beginning, where they're just like throwing in these little things like, this is what this character would do in this. So this is, just to get that out.
I'm going to go with 2 as well. I didn't think he was super annoying, but there was just a little something, same as the rest of the episode.
He was speaking for all of us in the scene with Creme Brulee, when he was like, what do you want? Why are you bothering me? Which is how I felt the whole episode. What do you want? Why are you in my life?
I would have been tempted to go for 3 simply because of that scene that you were just referencing, and then but it's not. It's another one of those weird meta things where it's like, it's not Wesley's fault. So 2.
Okay, 2 across the board. Who was your annoyance? I know Steven wants Riker.
Yeah,
and I said Yuta.
Yuta the Buta.
And the creme brulee because of that scene. He made up for it in other places, but that was just, oh my God.
Like it was like he wanted Wesley to punch him.
Yeah.
He wanted me to punch him. Yeah.
Creme brulee. I'm writing that down, but in 3 weeks we're not going to remember who creme brulee is. Crush of Star Trek. Steven, are you switching to Yuta?
I was real close. There were a couple other people. Crusher has the most beautiful assistants in the galaxy.
Yeah.
There was another incident. Oh, it was on the bridge when Crusher's up there as well. She always has beautiful women around her, just so she'd be like, maybe just so we're like, that woman's beautiful, but Crusher, she's still something. All that to say, I'm sticking with Leia Brahms or whatever. Yeah,
she's a solid choice.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jimmy. Like I like Yuta. I thought was beautiful. I liked her kiss with Riker. I was like, this is a little steamy, and then there was nothing, and it was just like, bleh.
Yeah, I'm not going with Yuta either. There was a brunette at the op station, a data station, and it might have been the same one last week I picked.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell. It was, I don't know. There's such a brief glimpse. I wasn't sure, so I'm going with op station brunette, which may or may not be the same op station brunette as last week.
First of all, I'm going to say that from Stephen's comments, I think we're going to find out later that Crusher was being problematic in her hiring practices. She's like part of the Chloe cult or whatever.
Oh no, Keith, bite your tongue.
Oddly, I think you guys have actually talked me into choosing Yuta. Wasn't sure, but
You did a beautiful.
Well, I'm glad we talked you into picking the really annoying person. Ranking the episode, let's start at the bottom.
oh,
Currently, our bottom is Evolution.
I don't know why, but I guess I like this one more simply because of it felt like it had more happening. But then
I think I'd give you more. I didn't like it.
This is just recency.
I didn't like Evolution.
What's next?
The bonding.
I think we're in the range.
Oh, we're definitely in the range.
Yeah.
I think I might go below just because that episode was better put together.
I think so too.
Not a great episode, but better put together than this.
I didn't realize, and again, it was adequate. I hated it, kind of thing. But yeah, I think I think I'd go below too.
I was just reading about Evolution, and that was the one where the nanites got into the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Ooh, now I'm tempted to go below Evolution. Okay, I'm voting for it as last place. Steven, are you voting between Evolution and the bonding?
Yeah, I think I'll stay there.
Keith?
By the way, Keith, next week you have to pick first because we were supposed to do
Oh, yes, I forgot. Because
next week we have to let you pick first, and then we'll be on the spot.
I'm above Evolution right now.
Are you below the bonding?
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Not only am I above Evolution, I'm over it. Over Evolution.
Well, then I am the outlier here. Barely. Next week, we're talking The Defector. When a Romulan officer defects to the Federation with a warning of an impending invasion, Captain Picard struggles to decide if he is to be believed.
So we had the conversation, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago about, do we think some of these titles are tipping the end of the episode?
Yeah.
Yep.
This one and next week really feels like they're like, this is exactly what the episode is about.
Yep.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think The Defector is what it's about at all.
Oh, maybe there's a twist.
I don't know. We haven't watched it yet. It's been so long.
I am. It sounds like it's what it is.
It could be.
Until then, live long.
Avoid. Nope. I can't tell you avoid cute blondes.
Avoid the Noid.
I can tell you, yeah.
Just keep trying to stun unless you have no other choice. That's what Spock would do.
Just put her in a big bear hug. Come on. You're stronger than her. She can't get those hands up. Come on.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?